That's Anisha. I'm gonna head up our beautiful, spectacular speakers, Erin and Sid. You guys, you guys are ready. So, uh, all of you, all of you, three of you, right there. How we're gonna go is I'm gonna ask questions, just pass questions from the chat section. Um, Mostly it's directed to someone, but there are some general questions too that you could answer um, by what you decide. You just decide. Let me
Okay.
just tell you, yeah, you know what? If I leave the stream right now, there's going to be two ladies and one gentleman, and we always have this comment that we uh, do not have enough uh, l- women speakers. And I just want you to understand, guys, that's like we're trying hard to have it balanced, but sometimes it just does like we want to have more female uh, representatives here on the stream because that energy is just out of this world when you guys speak. So if you have any friends who's in coding and programming in software development, we are having some upcoming events for cross-platform from for Node.js. This event, I'm the community manager for Node.js actually. That's going to be in early December. We're gonna have Python upcoming event. Um, you guys are welcome to invite your friends, and if they want to give the valuable information, share their knowledge, we're more than welcome. We're gonna accept it. We're gonna be appreciative. All right. Okay. So the question is, I think we start with Erin. Question is for you.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. I'm looking it up. And the question is, could you please recommend what tools to start with to do automated testing of a web project? Just basic, not for accessibility. And how to find a balance and not to spend too much effort on tests. Do I need to repeat it or is it understandable?
No, I got you. I think you absolutely have to be running ESLint, and there are a lot of plugins to ESLint. The Airbnb is fairly standard to extend their config for ESLint, so that's a great place to get started. Because it's just going to point out things in your code that are likely to be bad practices or cause problems. So, and then it really helps enforce standards across a team. So everybody's kind of writing code in the same style. So that one's huge. I mean, I think you do need to have some level of unit tests. And I think while the learning curve may be hard, it's good to just kind of push through and start learning and start writing tests and get a sense for what's the most appropriate amount of testing. There's definitely a too little and there's a too much. Like you can try to go for 100% test coverage and that's not actually buying you anything, but it's just taking more of your time. So there is totally a happy medium in there. And I don't think it's easy to figure out until you do it and get some experience and kind of learn from what tests were actually helpful, what actually caught problems for us, and what did I spend a lot of time on and like actually wasn't useful. So that's a big one. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, I think that you do want to set up a continuous integration system that's running your lint and your tests and, failing a build if any of those fail, because you definitely want to make sure everybody on the team is running those all the time. So
Sure.
if somebody didn't and they push and the tests fail, we need to all go fix that stuff. So those are kind of, I think, the big ones for getting started, at least off the top of my head right now.
All right. Thanks for the answer. Anisha just disappeared and I want to ask her a question. Gonna ask a tech team to contact Anisha, but let's move forward, guys. I mean, the choice is pretty obvious, Seed. Something for you. The question was, no, that was the basic question. What the example page link? Somebody asked you when you were showing something in the middle of your conversation. Um, if you would get what they mean,
No,
because
can you
I'm
say
not
that
sure.
again?
Yeah, hey, so it was the example page link. So you were showing something?
Maybe, I mean, all of them were from, the examples were from Code Sandbox.
So you can send me a link then, or whatever.
Sure.
Got it. Yeah, Anisha, welcome back. We're waiting for you. Um, Question for you. Can we directly refer to React hooks documentation, or is it better to understand Redux before going ahead with the hooks?
So I think the best thing about React hooks that I like is I had to go through a lot of documentation to understand the Redux flow, Redux thang saga, etc., etc. But with React hooks, I mean the documentation is enough if you are already familiar with the concept a little bit, and with a little bit of explanation, maybe one or two videos, you're good to go. And I think that's the best thing about hooks. You don't need to replace any previous knowledge about React at all. So yeah, it's within in between Redux and hooks. Definitely, hooks are very easier to implement and understand.
Sure, thanks a lot. Do you guys want to have a friendly exchange? Because there is a question for everyone, and I want you to be engaged for each other, I would say, and definitely requiring your help right now. And there is a question that goes from Kritya Anand, and he says, I understand that functional oriented programming is cleaner and the code is more readable. Hence, React community is moving from class to functional. Are there any trade offs we are making here? And I want you guys to debate. Just go all in, whoever, interrupt each other, uh, don't look back. I mean, live your life. Let's just go ahead with it. Who wants to start? Who can start?
I can start.
Sure, sir.
I okay, like if you want to make it like interesting, I don't think hooks are functional in the functional programming sense at all. Like it's functions over classes, but it's not like functional programming. So I think it's like I don't even think they intended to, like use it as a marketing gimmick, but it's just how sometimes happens. Like people get excited by the jargon. Um, so, but what is interesting, and of course, Anisha would have more to say about this, was that in their documentation, they kind of like wrote a post about why they like hooks better and they think it could be more interesting. And none of those reasons were like paradigm A is better than paradigm B, and that's the way everyone should write code. And like there was no like dividing nature of it. Like, I'm sorry, there's like not enough drama in that.
You tried hard. You tried hard.
I think if I can jump in, I think to me where functional programming does come in is when we're talking about making sure that our function components are pure. But besides that, I agree. There's not as many more, fundamental functional programming concepts in using functional components versus class components. It's really just that concept of, is it a pure function?
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, I do agree with that. So it's basically it depends on the use case that you're in, right? So for me, the whole idea of it is like if you do not need to use class component, you don't have the component to be that stateful, then it's a good thing to move on to the functions. But it absolutely depends on the use case that you are working on, right? Like for right now, we are developing a product, and we are using and design with UMI routing, and we are not even using hooks. though in some places it might be helpful, might reduce a task a little, but we do need to use Redux over there because our components are very stateful and they're using React compositions. And even like I saw a question where they asked like, is there any downside of this? Yes, there is. I mean, there are a lot of rendering going on, and to overcome that, they recently launched, I think, as a separate team of Facebook, they launched Reconcile, and so I would say the basic idea is like use according to the use case, whatever is works for you. For example, if there is a very small component with not so complicated logic, it's good to go with the functional component. And if it is like very stateful, then it's good to go for like MoveX or Redux. So I would say that.
I'm gonna do sunglasses anyway, guys, because it's so freaking bright. I'm among those rock stars. You know what? I get the question. If you're one of you were experiencing the speech of another one, how much of the information you were understanding, and if you got a question to anyone of you between all you three guys, is it clear? Do I need to paraphrase it?
Can you restate one more time?
Yeah. If you were by chance watching a speech by another person who's in Q&A chat right now, how much of the information did you get? And based on that, what question you would ask a person who is a speaker?
So if we have a question for another talk that we saw today, what would we ask?
Yeah. For example, what would you ask Anisha, Sid, Anisha, Erin, and Anisha, Sid, Erin?
Gotcha.
I mean, we can skip it anyways. So there is a question, I think, for everyone. When starting a new project or at the early stage startup, do you focus on accessibility first of the gate or focus on addressing it later? What is your take, guys?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Erin, you go first, okay.
Yeah, I've worked at a big company and I've worked at a very small company. And so the answer is kind of different depending on budget. At the big company, we started with accessibility from the very beginning, and every story was tested for accessibility. And so it was very loaded with focus on accessibility. In a smaller company where we're moving really fast and a story, the story I finished today is going to be changed dramatically by the story I finish tomorrow, it's not really efficient to be doing accessibility testing constantly. So it's, you're always going to be thinking about it a little bit, and the things to do, the things that are simple to do and fast to do, you probably should always be doing. But to do like a really big focus on testing and major fixing of accessibility issues, I think you might be able to put off until the feature you're working on or the app you're working on stabilizes a bit, then put a lot of time into looking at accessibility and fixing things a little towards the end. So it all just kind of depends on what's going to fit your project better.
Gotcha. Sid, what do you have to say about it?
No, yeah, I agree. I've had the exact same experiences where it's like, it's a big company, you can focus it from the start. And it's like in the design system team, we could just spend infinite amount of time. We had the permission to just go down these rabbit holes. And it's like, there's some really fun rabbit holes. Like if there's a form inside a model, figure out the keyboard, like tab direction. It's a lot of fun. But now at a super tiny company, it almost feels like I'm stealing time to make sure the app is somewhat accessible. And then when it gets hard, I kind of can just say, okay, maybe I'll come back to this next week. So there's like, it's more chaotic. It's more like borrowing and a little here, a little there. There's not enough structure to it. Anisha.
Yeah, so I don't really have experience with startup, But yeah, in big companies and MNCs, so I think we are working on. I'm working on a UX designer right now to get a user interface for performance benchmarking, and I feel like that goes through various different kind of testing. Okay, this satisfies this rule or not, and it goes on. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming because it goes on for a very long time, and I feel they make sure that it's okay to put it out and start implementing. And I guess whatever I have heard from my colleagues or friends in startup, the scenario is a little different, and uh, it's a little bit quicker. And so I think, yeah, they, in MNCs, they do focus on accessibility from earlier stage of the development process.
Get it, get it, get it. So there is a more technical question right now from Sebastian Puente, or Puente. I'm sorry, Sebastian, I'm mispronouncing it. So no, that's actually was for Erin, but if you guys could reply to it too, you're welcome to do it afterwards. So regarding A11Y, what value do you get from unit tests or E2E tests against just having the ESLint plugins configured? Is it worth writing a bunch of unit tests for A11Y for all components? So help me out if I'm wrong.
Yeah, like in the example I showed where you could kind of test a large component, maybe a component that represents an entire page in your unit test, then you don't have to write a whole lot of those. I think it would probably get really time consuming if you were writing tests against a lot of little components. You might as well just spend that time manually testing. So I don't think there's a lot of bang for your buck doing that. But if you're testing like every page, that hopefully shouldn't be a lot of tests, and I think that's probably worth doing.
Sure. I'm thinking that we're gonna go with a couple of technical questions, and we're gonna wrap it up with philosophical questions, lifestyle questions, or just your way through the coding career questions, something like that. So for Erin, once again, when implementing ESLint in my pipeline, where do you recommend is the best place to enforce it? GitHub action status check before merge, question mark. With every push, question mark, a hook that runs on your local machine that enforces linting before publishing. I could actually copy paste this question in a private chat for us guys, so you can see it too.
So yeah, I can definitely answer that. In fact, I just recently joined a team, and they had a pre-push Git hook that was doing linting, and I did not enjoy it because I might have some changes that are unstaged and some that are staged, and my unstaged stuff is not done, and so the linter is going to fail. But then it would prevent me from committing the stuff I had staged. So I don't recommend doing that. I think that at the PR level is probably the best place to put that. You don't want something blocking you too often. You want that gate to be before you're able to merge the code, in my opinion.
Okay. And there is one question for all of you. What is your take on upgrading legacy projects with new features? Should you keep using outdated code or refactor everything? Focus is on time versus quality trade-off. I'm actually feeling that this question is not super technical, but more a philosophical one. But if you guys have a desire right now to answer this question, I would love to hear Sid's take on this, and then we go with Anisha.
Sure. Like my gut reaction is that do you really have a choice of being like, we're gonna throw everything away and we're gonna build everything new and get it right on the first try so that it's never bad. I always feel like it's a constant refactor that happens. Like every time you touch something, you end up going and refactoring it, and it's like some code goes stale, and then whoever wrote it, probably you, wrote it with your best intentions in mind, with the information you had, but now the assumptions are no longer true, so it's all crap. And it's like a constant thing. I've never like been lucky enough to like inherit an old project and be like, now we're gonna throw it away and rewrite it. And it's gonna be so good. Like I have been part of like massive refactors where we threw a version out, built a new one, the same team, all the assumptions, we knew everything. Like we were best set for like doing it all over again. We still didn't do a good job. Like we still got a bunch of things wrong. We still had bugs. And by the time the project was over, we already hated parts of it that we wanted to change again. So it's like for me, it's always been like a constant thing. I don't think somebody can say do this and it will work out.
I don't think anyone will disagree with this, man.
No, nobody can disagree with it. I mean, before a few months, we were trying to upgrade React to use hooks, and it's it's a risk to take,
Anisha, I'm sorry.
like
Could
that
you
nothing
repeat it?
will break in production. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought that internet connection was logging. It was actually indeed logging, but that was my internet connection, not yours. So I'm double sorry right now.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, that's what I was saying. That it's always a good idea to keep it updated instead of just trying to switch it at a single instance, because even though it maybe React hook says that it won't break it, but you can't take that risk when you are in production. It might break something. So it's a good idea to keep make it updated as much as possible. I have been in a scenario where it takes 20 days to like fix a production and then push it to staging and then check it, then again production. So it's a bad idea to just switch it like that and expect that everything will work out. That's a bad idea.
Not as bad as the next question I wanted to ask you. But is it really bad? Let's evaluate it. Can it even say like that, being a moderator? There are no bad questions, guys. All questions are good. Nishma Muskis asks, is jQuery really bad for website house? What does she mean? And what meaningful answer can you give? Is jQuery really bad for websites health? Who's ready to answer, guys? Raise your hand.
I can go second.
Good play, sir. Good play. Should we skip this question? Should I really go deep down with this question?
I mean, it's a good question in the sense that, like you need advice that use Vue.js because React is bad, or use React because jQuery is bad. Like there always has to be a villain and a hero. For some reason, like we really like that narrative. So I've heard like people say jQuery is bad and like different reason every time. But I grew up on jQuery. I love that shit. That's how I learned to do web dev. So I don't like hearing bad things about it. It's still a great piece of software. So in fact, like I would argue that for some projects, jQuery is actually a better solution than something like React or Vue. So yeah, it has a great place in the ecosystem. It's just old and we don't like old things. But other than that, it's great. Use it whenever you can.
Good, good, nice. Nishma, it was actually a very good question. It was just me being myself. Appreciate it. Ladies, your take on that?
jQuery is like an excellent tool for letting developer directly manipulate the DOM. So I think it's an excellent library when you need ad hoc direct manipulation of DOM. And avoiding jQuery at all cost is not likely, because like when you are using Angular or React or something, that's very unlikely that you are going to use it. So I don't have any hard feelings for jQuery. It's amazing. I mean, it really gives it's a very powerful tool for direct manipulation. And even though people will argue that you should not do that, but I kind of like it.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Sid wants to add something real quick.
Yeah, I actually have a question for Erin on like related to this
Sure,
space.
go ahead. Just shoot it
do you-
straight. Don't be afraid. Nobody's watching. But
Do you feel like
Maybe.
jQuery UI, like at its peak, like the just pull some UI, the chances that it's like really high quality and accessible were way higher than like finding like an accessible thing now? Like when I like try to pull something from npm like React -color picker or date picker, there's like at least 5 or 6 that you have to go through to find the one that's like responsive, accessible. And I feel like maybe it's just like a lot more of us now. But jQuery UI just had this weird thing that like it used to work out of the box and be good. I wonder if that's just me. Like I just don't know how to search for good things.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything about accessibility back when I was using jQuery. So I definitely can't say from any personal experience. But my guess is that because those components were simpler and we weren't doing so many fancy things with CSS and styling and whatnot, that they probably were more accessible than a lot of our components today. You know, the third-party library components that we find that look cool. Or do a lot of things, but they aren't written to be accessible. But that's just totally like conjecture. I don't know if it's really the case, but I think probably a lot of our stuff was a little more accessible, you know, a number of years back because we weren't doing so many fancy things. But I mean, you can argue, you know, should we not do fancy things? That's important too.
let's argue.
I mean, the theory checks out. But yeah, it's like I guess we've struggled to do fancy things while keeping it accessible.
Right, which is totally possible. Like I hear the argument all the time of, you know, if you just write HTML, it's accessible to begin with and then we break it. Well, I think it's okay that we write complicated and fancy things. There's also ways to make it accessible. You can do both.
Nice. I got a follow up for Erin. Sepso, that's a nickname, I believe. And Sepso, being a huge fan in the chat section, I appreciate it. Okay, I just missed it. It wasn't Sepso. It was somebody else. It was Sahil Patan. Yeah, I missed it, guys. So, Erin, is there any other tools, other JAWS to easily test the accessibility features?
So for people who don't know, JAWS is a screen reader that is licensed, that only runs on Windows. So we've got on Windows, there's JAWS and NVDA, which is free. On Mac, there's VoiceOver. You know, when it comes to the screen readers, I think that you kind of have to learn them all and test with them all, at least, you know, as I argued, you know, if you want to wait a little towards the end of your project, once it's stabilized, you've got to run through with all the screen readers because you don't know, you know, all of our users are using different screen readers. So you need to make sure it's compatible with all of them. You know, when it comes to the easier ways, it's kind of these auditing tools that I talked about today. But if you're going to that manual testing phase, which you do need to do, you've got to target each of the different areas that people are going to be approaching your app with. So you've got to cover the screen readers. I don't think there's really any shortcut to those. You've just got to learn how to use them and use them on your app. You've got to look at some of the high contrast tools, see what your app looks like in various high contrast modes. You've got to try it out with a keyboard only. So like kind of those things you just have to do. And unfortunately, I don't think there's any faster way or easier way to do them.
Good. I love it. Just was waiting for a moment of silence for that. But how do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about not moving for such a long time? Because I'm sitting right here and I feel like my body is aching. Like I want to do waves. I want
Yep.
to do a bit of exercise.
I was
And
doing
that's
some stretches between talks.
real, for real, for real.
Yeah.
Was your, what were the favorite stretch moves of yours that you did?
I stretched out my legs because they're super tight, and so it was like got a lot of touching my toes and stretching my legs out stuff.
Can we go with the upper body demonstration if there is such an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, you
Stretch
can
moves, like what you
stretch.
can do. Like that's actually very good. I think that's gonna be one of the like top three advices that you could give to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good. You want
guys,
to do
right, that's what I
rest.
wanted from the beginning. That's what I wanted. I love it. Let's go. Yeah, but
You know what? It's 3 a.m. over here.
Wow.
And if I do it right now, I won't get sleep after
Oh my
this.
goodness.
and tomorrow you show up at work at what time? 8 a.m. 9.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry, come
tomorrow
again.
what time you show up at work?
I think I'm going to probably take a sick leave because I'm not gonna
Smart.
wake up. That's not happening tomorrow.
So there is no boss from your company that's watching this. By the way, talking about the culture of the company, what you guys can tell about the culture for developers, what should it be for developers to grow professionally, mentally? What kind of culture do you personally feel is good for you, and would advise for those upcoming guys who want to join an office, what they should look after, what they should look for, what type of environment? Um, I think anyone could start. Sid, your turn.
All right. Okay, I'll shy away from giving like any advice because it's like I'm scared of giving career advice because it's like so I don't know what works for me doesn't work for somebody else.
Go ahead,
It's
sir.
so I don't know, it's just cryptic. But I can tell what I like what I enjoy is that this like if I look back, like every time I've grown a lot in my career, it's been when I had a lot of flexibility to chase weird rabbit holes, right? Like in a place where I'm expected to be super productive and efficient, like where people ask, is this task worth it, right? Like if somebody says, is accessibility really worth it, should we tackle that? That's a place that I don't know, I just don't get a lot done. But if I'm like encouraged to like build something that I think is high quality, like I believe that this is worth everyone's time, that's the kind of environment that I really strive in. Like I'm the person who doesn't enjoy the 0 to 80%, but then spend all my time in like the last 20. That's my jam, and that's not a lot of places that enjoy the last 20 because it's like diminishing returns, I guess.
Nice. How much of these qualities you ladies share with Sid? What about that 80% and last 20? You girls feel the same? Anisha?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, I mean, if I feel like I can't really work on a like environment where you just have to like make it anyhow and without really getting into like what should be the concept behind it. And I mean, it should be fast, but it shouldn't be like don't care about anything, just make some anything and just give it in a specific time. I just don't like it. And apart from that, I really like taking some of the time that I get in a day for my personal learning. so that each day I learn something new apart from my work thing, because anyway I do that like around like 10 hours a day. So I like taking a couple of hours for myself, and that I guess everybody should have that flexibility to do that, because every time it's at least for MNCs, it's very highly unlikely that you get to experiment with different technologies out of the box. In startups, you get more and more features coming up very fast rate, but it's in MNCs it's kind of unlikely. So it's nice to experiment with different things that you usually don't deal with in your work environment. So I kind of enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I'd say I go through phases where I do want a lot of time to really dig into like the nth level of understanding something and figuring out what is the like absolute, in my opinion, best way to do X. And then other times I just want to write code and I just want to like produce, and that's really exciting. So like I'll do one for a while and then get bored and then want to do the other. But I think this kind of ties in really well with a question I saw somebody asked about, like for a junior dev, would they be better starting off at a big company or like a small startup? And I think in my experience with working for each, I think a junior dev is going to thrive more in a bigger company where they are given more time and there isn't this constant clock ticking where you better be producing. I think you kind of have to be at like a senior level to be able to just churn out code that works, and you're not thrashing on PRs because somebody asks you to do something a different way, or like you've got bugs because you're rushing. So that's what I think about that.
Nice, solid answers. I was so obsessed with that, with the speeches of yours. So many productive, effective, valuable information, guys. It's amazed about it. There is actually a technical question we got. One popped in the chat. So what do we think about Svelte as compared to React? What do you think about Svelte as compared to React? Has any of one of you given it a try? Swig was asking that questions.
I don't have any experience with that.
I have not tried Svelte. I love React, and I'm kind of in this mode right now where like I don't want to do anything else. So it could be great, but I don't
Yeah, I was
really
about to follow
need
up.
to.
Do you even know what is the first time I said Svelte? But yeah, now I know that the right pronunciation is Svelte.
Svelte. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. I'm learning every day, and that's because of you guys. Um, there are a lot of things coming up in chat. You guys, what you want to do? Because we got still 10 minutes left. In 5 minutes, I'm thinking 5 minutes, and then we go take a rest. Your audience, we're gonna take a rest. We're gonna do some exercises that we showed you. Maybe drink a cup of water with lemon, with different stuff in it to refresh ourselves. What you guys want to talk about? You got any ideas? Maybe you wanted to discuss something. Maybe you want to ask questions.
I have a question for Sid. So how do you guys deal with the user experience research? Uh, Considering that you guys have a very small team, how do you deal with that?
The short answer is poorly, and like the longer answer is we kind of work very transparently, openly. Like I don't know, I think that works for us because like it's in the client side is open sourced and the product is like has a giant free tier, so we want more and more people to use it, which basically means we have way too many users, so we get a lot of visibility. So then anything that new that we're working on, we get a lot of eyes on it, right? So what we've started doing like a few months ago is like there's like always like a parallel feature flag. We don't build feature flag, we're not that smart. So we're just like right now I'm working on like profiles, an alternate version of the profile, so it's just available on a different URL. And then whenever I want some feedback, I either like DM people on Twitter that I want feedback from, Or sometimes I'm like feeling brave about it. I just like post it like, here's a work in progress, right? And then people are kind enough to like reply with feedback. That's really like and it's like flawed, and it's not, I can't even call it user research, because it's like it's so biased based on like literally the people who already like you and follow you give you feedback. But there's like it gives us like a good early hunch about if we're in the right direction or not. Other than that, we just like really hope we get it right, and then when we actually do release things, that's when we really get to know.
Yep, that's a nice approach. Yeah, thank you.
Nice. Yeah, guys, I'm gonna jump real quick. Want to finish it up with some closing speech, some closing words. So first of all, really appreciative of you being here. 3 of you are heroes, making it possible for everyone, for our team, for the audience. There are so many positive feedbacks, so many positive questions, comments. I want you to understand that what you're doing is really special. I mean, somebody could argue what it takes to talk at an online conference. Many people do it, but even more people not do it. And the thing that you give the opportunity for somebody to learn from your knowledge, you sharing your experiences, I think that's really big here. And yeah, I hope to see you somewhere in the real world. And I hope to see you and hear from you. And just enjoy your successes as you move forward in your software development journey.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being like a really good hype man. I
Seriously.
enjoyed that.
Yes.
Yeah, for real. Like
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
imagine
for
that. Let's imagine that nobody watching us. Okay, guys. I'm gonna finish it. And yeah, let's keep in chat.
All right.
Yep.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Nice to meet you all.
You too.